radio burning up above. Beautiful baby, be my love all night till the blow our way.
Yeah, Iggy was right. When you look at what the concerns of youth are, you have something that's really incredibly perceptive. It's almost like poetry, you know, these little phrases that capture the state of youth, the somewhat monotony, the sense of closed doors, the sense of rootlessness and boredom.
There was no way it would fit into FM radio. Anything was playing then. It was a different definition of what music is and of what rock and roll is. The Stooges were that, as the Ramones were that 5 or 6 years later.
The Stooges are totally the starting point for what would become punk.
That's peanut butter.
Ahead of their time, the Stooges would not find due recognition until much later. Instead, it would take an outsider to export the Detroit sound worldwide.
Consistently, for 50 years, there's been a phenomenon in which, in the recording industry, there is a hot town. And when one good thing happens that lights up a town, then whoosh, they will swoop in from the coasts. In the 60s, Detroit had its moment. All sorts of people, you know, were going to get signed. And in fact, I think that's why Alice Cooper moved there and became a Detroit band.
Having been on the fringes of LA's rock scene in the late 60s, Alice Cooper had met with little success before moving back to Michigan.
In Los Angeles and in New York, if you're going to go to a Ramones concert, if you're going to go to a Alice concert, if you're going to go to a Kiss concert, back then, you'd come home from your job, go home, put on your black torn-up Levi's, put on your leather jacket, mess up your hair, kind of smear some makeup on and go to the show. In Detroit, they would just come from work, because that's what they wore.
They did a gig with the Stooges, and 3 months later they were neighbors, you know, and all of a sudden it was Under My Wheels and 18, and you know, and they killed us.
He would like smear peanut butter all over himself and jump in the audience, and he was a show unto himself. Musically, they weren't very theatrical. The band just kind of stood there and played, but Iggy did all the work. Whereas Alice Cooper, every single song was a theatrical bit.
They took our themes, articulated them well enough, threw all the crazy shit out, did very, very good songcraft, and good vocals, good, strong, nasty rock vocals, and they did the units.
Alice Cooper took the Detroit sound and turned it into a lucrative pantomime, leaving the uncompromising Stooges and MC5 in limbo.
I think everyone went home to their respective mothers, basically. That's what I did first. We were all broke. I was strung out. I decamped home until I was stabilized enough to go out and seek further employment.
And what happens is it's a crushing defeat. You know, it's a blow to your ego. that one day you were the golden child and you're not anymore, and it's painful. And what I did was found the pain-killing properties of Jack Daniels and heroin.
It's a sad tale that all the Detroit bands kind of ended badly, but then, it's not surprising in terms of Detroit. There is a sense that Detroit will get you.
But there would be a happy ending for one person from Detroit's rock scene. John Sinclair was 2 years into his sentence when fellow revolutionaries John and Yoko Lennon got wind of his plight and came to Michigan.
This song I wrote for John Sinclair. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
On the following Monday, John was freed.
Who was that person in the corrections department of Michigan who made that decision to let John out 3 days after John Lennon came? I mean, that coincidence, I would kiss that person. It was just amazing.
I've been out of trouble for 35 years since I got out of prison because I don't do that anymore. I don't give a fuck what they do. I'm gonna sit there and have my joint, and I don't care what they think, or I'm just gonna stay out of their way.
As the new decade arrived, Detroit started to resemble a ghost town. Motown finally completed its move to LA in '72, where a few of its more visionary artists pioneered a tougher, new funk sound with a real grip on what the black inner city was becoming.
A boy is born in hot time, Mississippi, surrounded by four walls that ain't so pretty. His parents give him love and affection to keep him strong, moving in the right direction, living just enough for the city. His father worked some days for 14 hours, and you can bet he barely makes $1. His mother goes to scrub the floors for many, and you best believe she hardly gets a penny, living just enough for the city.
What you had in Detroit, which was happening already before the riots, you had a city that was going black at its core, and white people that didn't like that and were moving out to surround the city.
Detroit continued to decline through the first Arab oil embargo, and that's when Chrysler, GM, and Ford got caught, producing cars that get 9 miles to the gallon, and the Japanese said, oh, well, we can make a car that gets 40 miles to the gallon. And so that was the beginning of the end in Detroit.
Life both rose and fell with the fortunes of the American auto companies. And at that time, they left Detroit like an empty peanut shell. They drained the lifeblood out of it, and the money disappeared and the manufactories disappeared to where the taxes were more favorable.
But whilst the city's industry has been decimated, its music has survived. Today, even some of those who may have overindulged in the 60s are still going strong.
The Stooges are playing now. They're more vital and more fabulous than ever. Their audiences are bigger than ever. People who weren't born then love them more than ever. It's gotten through. And if we look around now, the Beatles are not the major influence. It's more likely that the Stooges and the Ramones are.
I mean, as simple as the Stooges' music is, in a sense, probably now it's far more popular than it was in 1969 and 70. You know, even today, with the kind of nouveau garagic sounds that come out of there, the Demolition Doll Rods, the White Stripes. These are bands that really bring it down to an elemental level. Got a good riff, you got a phrase to stick over it, you whack the snare, and there you are.
And along with the White Stripes, Eminem resides at the top of Detroit's musical pile. The world's biggest hip-hop star, Slim Shady, is another suburban white kid upholding Detroit's musical tradition for blending black and white. His songs bring to life the social problems of modern Detroit, a city where within its 8-mile road boundary, the population has now halved to under 1 million, over 80% of whom are black and a third of whom live below the breadline.
This world is mine for the taking. Make me king as we move toward a new world order. A normal life is boring, but superstardom's close to postmortem. It only grows harder.
If you think of Detroit in the modern period as a huge, vast African-American ghetto, it's like New Orleans after the flood. Detroit has been through all this, and they didn't even have a natural disaster. It just got washed over by America, you know.
We stand here today. Me and Chuck was just talking earlier. Chrysler just signed a new contract 2 weeks ago, and today on the news, they announced they're laying off 12,000 people permanently. Half of those 12,000 people are directly here in the city of Detroit, which is going to make things that much more devastating than it is now. Everything has just been dismantled. Or you ride down the streets here, it look like Lebanon or something.
No more games, I'ma change what you call rage. Tear this roof off like two dogs' cage. I was playing in the beginning, the mood all changed.
Visit bbc.co.uk/Detroit to watch extended interviews from Motor Cities Burning and to find out more about the music of Detroit. Next tonight, John Lee Hooker and Friends.
And I can't provide the right